All right, Melchizedek. It's time you finally learn the truth. For many years, our beautiful land of Newsy enjoyed peace and prosperity. Until the king and queen were stricken by a mysterious illness.
Here, take this
If you're like
medicine, my
me,
lord.
and you got
Perhaps it
no
will help.
life and
Thank
there's
you.
nowhere to go, then tune in to the Animation Truman Show. You'll be glad you did.
But that's terrible.
Indeed.
And here we are. So, if you're out there, whoever you might be, well, obviously Amar might be because I said hello on the chat more or less. Let me know. Put something in the chat. Make sure this is live. I'm kind of glad what just happened. So I was going to live stream at 10 a.m. and what occurred should not shock us. And it really speaks to what I was going to talk about today, because I was going to talk a little bit about business, actually, and the business of animation and some of the challenges that go with that at many levels. And that sounds like gibberish, but it's actually really relevant. What just happened is totally relevant to it, because what occurred was that by taking a live stream on my channel and setting it to unlisted, when I went to schedule the live stream today, YouTube assumed that I wanted the new live stream to be unlisted, even though there's never once ever been a scheduled live stream that was intended to be unlisted. That's never happened. So this was an interesting but unsurprising eventuality, which is that the tool, YouTube in this case, made a judgment about what I would want to do that just kind of created a default situation where, well, the last thing you did was set a video to unlisted, so now when you live stream, that must be what you want to do again, which is, of course, comedically ridiculous. And it really makes you think. It really speaks to what I was going to talk about today, and because this is the ecosystem that we live in, okay, where we're inexorably tied to machines and in different ways, and we really depend on those machines to kind of sort of get it right. What prompted, there's a number of things prompted this line of thinking today, but one of them was that I hopped on my laptop and was doing some work in Krita, and I realized that Krita basically does not have a way to scale animation keys, meaning that you've got a bunch of animation keys in here, and there's a number of things that could go wrong. Let's say you blocked in those animation keys at 24 frames a second, then you realize, oh, wait a second, I wanted to render this out at 8 frames a second. So now what you basically would have to do is take all your animation keys, of which there could be quite a few, and you want to basically squeeze them down into 1/3 as much time, so that when it plays back at 8 frames a second, you get the same basic effect as what you were getting previously at 24. Well, not only does Krita not have a way to do that, as far as I can tell, Tahoma does not have a way to do that. It may be somewhat possible with some cleverness using the function editor or the spreadsheet in Tahoma. But basically, of the software that I use, the only one of the three that actually allows you to scale animation keys, by basically lassoing, like I just did here, you lasso all the keys, and then basically you run a scaling operation. You shrink down the range of time that the keys occur in, and they're all just scaled accordingly. Well, Blender can do that. Blender's been able to do that for 20 years. And it's interesting because you think about it, in the course of doing your creative work, what do we really want to do? I mean, we just want to get busy. We just want to go. We just want to do the work, right? And it often turns out that the functionality that's the most important and useful is the very unglamorous, pedestrian types of capabilities that really don't come up very often when all you do is little toy animations to just sort of kick the tires of your software and see if you can sort of make something happen. You know, when you're kicking the tires, you don't bump into the sorts of things or tools or capabilities that you need when you're doing something that's of a larger scale, or, for lack of a better term, of a more professional quality. Okay, so Darren says you can retime. So OpenTunes and Tahoma maybe finds the middle ground on that particular issue. Okay. But if you guys will indulge me this morning, I'm gonna go ahead and delve down this road a little bit, okay? Because I think that we could. Well, first of all, on the computer side, it was startling. It was actually startling, and I've had this happen before. I'm sure it's happened to you guys too. Is, you know, you get up in the morning and you start working on your computer, you start doing something, and it is truly baffling and shocking how many things actually, quote unquote, go wrong. I loaded Reaper, and for whatever reason, out of nowhere, the MIDI didn't work. I got the MIDI to work by restarting Jack. Then we got apparently some buffer overruns or something, and the program went into a lock condition. You load Krita, you find out you can't scale the keys. You load Krita, you find out that the features of Krita 5 that are ostensibly the biggest deal, in other words, the whole reason you'd upgrade to Krita 5 largely is because of the things like the transform mask, the ability to basically create animated keyframe data. Well, the thing about it is that the implementation of that, it works, and if you save your work frequently, you can get work done. Obviously, I am doing it. But at the same time, if you want to be critical, the fact is that it's extremely buggy and unreliable if, again, you go beyond just a very, very sort of toy project. In other words, for example, if you were to, like a common real world scenario that would be completely reasonable is you animate something, and then, but that something that's being animated is part of a bigger something that itself needs to be animated, and when that bigger thing is animated, you really want the smaller thing that's animated to just continue doing its thing within the context of the larger movement or translation or whatever it is. I mean, that's like as basic as it gets, right? Well, just getting to that level, just getting to that second degree of animation using the new tools in Krita 5, in my experience so far for about a month now, is you're gonna, if not crash the software, you're gonna get a locked condition. Now, one of the ironies of that is that what I'm talking about doing has worked really, really well in Tahoma for well over a year. I mean, a couple of years. Or OpenTunes, really from the time OpenTunes was released. What I'm talking about doing in Krita, that as if it was a novelty, is something that OpenTunes has been able to do for a long, long time, and it's basically not a problem at all. I'm not talking about the scaling of keys. I'm talking about the just multiple levels of animation that are building up on each other, right? So, just to get specific, Darren, the retiming thing, I just don't remember how you do that. So, does this have to do with keyframes, the cells, retiming them, or are we talking about retiming the actual animation keys? If you could weigh in on that particular point. I haven't done it in a long time, so I seem to recall something about that. Reframing. I mean, you can reframe. So anyway, if they're okay, so when you retime, it does it for a specific exposure, I thought. In other words, you're talking about retiming the cells. Obviously, that's true. You can change from being on 3s or 4s to 2s, and you can do it on a, you don't have to do it on a column-by-column basis. You can grab a certain number of cells and retime them individually. So, yeah, you definitely can. And it's, you know, I mean, it's a fair point that if it's something you have to do, there is a way to do it. So, but it's interesting that what I experienced on the laptop this morning, I immediately experienced again on YouTube. Okay, so in the sense that I just go to live stream. So for me, I'm just like, I just want to live stream. I'm using the same live stream settings I used last time. Nothing's changed. Literally nothing's changed. Well, YouTube changed it for me because I had set a video, well, many videos actually, to unlisted, so I could just put them in some playlists and clean up my channel. It assumed I wanted to go. So it assumed I wanted to go unlisted. Time stretch. Okay, from the edit cell numbers, choose time stretch. Okay. Ah, yes. Yeah, and edit cell numbers, right here is what he's talking about. Yeah, and okay, time stretch, great, excellent. So at least with the cells, what I was wanting to do specifically though, importantly, was retime animation keys, and I'm going to assume that that does not work. I'm gonna guess, well, maybe, let me see here. Reframe each edit cell numbers. Well, it says time stretch and I've got a plastic tool selected, so what the heck, we'll just see if it works. The selected cells from the old range to the new range, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna do exactly what I said before, which is shrink it down by a factor of 3. So I'm gonna shrink it down to 3. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it doesn't work. Okay, so that's what I thought. It doesn't retime the animation keys, and in this case, when you're talking about translation animation, it can become, if you don't plan ahead, obviously, enormously important to be able to retime animation keys. So you would if you'd say, well, I just want to be able to do this, and see, Blender kind of got it elegantly correct in the sense that when you resize something in 3D, you hit the S key to scale it, and they have it work the same way in the timeline. So in the timeline, you just hit the S key to scale, and it scales the keys down to a smaller size the same way you'd scale geometry, which I think is something that's always been a strength of Blender, is they use a common paradigm throughout the software, so that it becomes pretty obvious how to do things that you actually don't yet know how to do because you can guess. A workaround is to collapse that column to a subscene and then use the same command on the main timeline. Okay, now that's an interesting, and I like that. Okay, and it wouldn't have to be plastic tool, it could be the animation tool or whatever, but that's a great idea. So what we have here is we've got plastic tool animation, and what Darren is saying, and this is the kind of stuff you do kind of have to learn. Probably the prudent thing to do here would be take all 3 of these, and let's just go Control-Shift down there. So we make this into a subscene, and then what I'm going to do is, for the sake of testing this, I'm going to say, let's play this. Okay, so you can see kind of the pace at which his hand is moving around. This isn't like the greatest scene I've ever done, by the way, but okay. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to say, from here to here, we're going to scale it up so that it all happens more slowly. That's the idea. Let's see if it works. So we're going to go edit cell numbers, time stretch, and let's scale this up to, let's make it stupid. Let's just go up to 60. Okay, and now theoretically that should work, because what it's basically doing is it's saying take the first frame of the subscene, okay, which is this, but then play 4 frames in real time before you actually move to the second cell in the subscene, right? You know, we multiplied it by 4. So that should work. Let's see. And it does. Well, yeah, it does. So there you go. So that works. So it turns out that's a little bit of a kludgy workaround, but you know what? It's also an effective workaround. It actually is a pretty reasonably good solution to a tricky problem that might be would be much more complicated if you needed to have smooth interpolation between these positions. I think in the original I actually had them I really didn't have the interpolation anyway, so I'm not going to take the time to test whether there's a way to kind of sort of make that work. And if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, so just a really quick diversion here. Goswami has a problem with Blender coloring, okay? So we're going to test the waters here very quickly just to see if we should be trying to help out or not, okay? And so question is, what version of Blender are you using, Goswami? And I need you to answer that before I even consider answering your question. Blender's filling color, it's not coloring properly, not coloring edges, not filling half face or anything. There's multiple reasons why that could be. So until Goswami tells us what version of Blender he's using, I'm not going to touch that one with a 10-foot pole. So, file, new scene. 2.3, okay, so, okay. You would, yeah, don't be, I mean, Darren, let's not be surprised. Goswami's jumping around, and that's okay. I mean, he is going to be learning things. So the answer to your question, Adyan Goswami, is that Blender 2.8 series, basically getting up into the 2.9s, has well-known, well-established issues with filling. The biggest problem you're going to have, and I can show you here, if I draw a shape, okay, and I want to fill it in Blender, okay, if my character is like this and I hit the fill tool and I go to fill it, what Blender will do, 2.8 series, is this entire region from here to here that was off screen will not fill. Okay, so that's a well-established problem. So my advice to you is very, very simple. If you have to do this before we can help you any further. So what you need to do is I want you to download. And by the way, I'm sure you're talking about the grease pencil, by the way, as opposed to something 3D. Okay, so I'm sure you're talking about doing fill operations with the grease pencil. So what you need to do is download Blender 2.93 LTS. Okay, there are reasons why I like. There are absolutely reasons why I actually prefer 2.81A myself, but that's irrelevant. 2.83 is pretty close. The difference is minimal. But what you need to do is download 2.93 LTS, long-term support. So this is essentially a stable version that's going to be supported and not change for a long time. There are things about it that are different than 2.81. But in the long run, if you're going to screw around with Blender, I would venture to say, unless you're going for version 3, which I am not at this point, then 2.93 LTS is kind of the most safe and stable version to use in the 2.8 series. Okay, why am I telling you to do this? Because what you need to do is load up this, install 2.93 LTS, load up the scene that you are currently working on that's giving you the problem, load that scene up into 2.93, and then try the fill operation exactly the same way you did it in 2.83. What you'll probably discover is the stuff that wouldn't fill properly now does. Okay? So you can try it, and you may run into other problems. Who knows? But that's what you need to do to test that the problem you're having is the normal problem. If you want to, I'll even give you this latitude, my friend. If you want to avoid doing everything I just said to do, then when you're working in 2.81, or 8.3 I should say, it's absolutely critical when you do a fill operation that you zoom out so that your grease pencil object is completely visible in the screen. Otherwise you will not get proper fills. Now, having said that, what will happen is this will all fill, but then you'll have a blank space here, but then when you move this over, you can do another fill operation. The problem is it's persnickety, where if you look close, you can sometimes kind of see the seam between the two fill areas, and basically it's a kludgy, broken fill system. It really is, and nobody would deny that. And they never really quite got it right. So once you get into 2.9 plus, they sort of solve that. In the big picture of things, for most people, especially if they're going to fiddle with Blender, 2.93 LTS would be a good choice. There's just too much stuff that's it's constant. It's a real moving target, So for me, I either use 2.79, or I use 2.81A, or I use 2.93 LTS. That's what I use. Those are the three I use. I'm also pretty comfortable with 2.49 and 2.28, which is going back 20 years. So, yeah, it's kind of strange because what you said just right there, Goswami, would seem like it's the opposite of what would happen. In other words, what should happen is you should see the gap if you zoom in, not when you zoom out. But I don't know. I don't know. Just do what I said, and if you're gonna do the Blender thing, probably, especially if you're gonna do grease pencil. If you're gonna do grease pencil in Blender, you're way better off to go to 2.93 in the long run. But in the short run, just redo your fill operations where you can see the whole drawing on the screen, and you'll probably solve it. There's other nuance to it that complicate things, but I'm not going to go into that and speculate on what you might be bumping into, because we'd just be spinning around in circles here. So what I was thinking about this morning when I ran into the computer problems. We'll come over here to the spiral notebook, okay? I was thinking about how it really is kind of startling how many things are either are broken or just don't work, and the degree to which we have to work around things that really just don't work as advertised. And the problem is, well, let me zoom out here a little bit and say I was looking at this Red River, which is our local waste management company. Okay, so they're based in Texas, and they declared bankruptcy recently. Okay, there have been service issues here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, but for the most part, they've done an okay job. But Red River is an interesting case because the waste management in Fort Wayne, Indiana, was handled by National Servol for many, many, many years, quite reliably. Why we made the switch to Red River a few years ago, I have no idea. I could make some snarky speculations about, somebody had the bright idea that it would save us money, But my argument with things like waste management or any utility is that generally, if both the administration and the implementation is as local as possible, that's generally a good thing. If only because the people that are picking up your trash are in fact members of your community, which means that your tax dollars are actually feeding back into your own community. That can be a good thing. So I was kind of thinking about some of the challenges they face as a company that's trying to scale nationally, and it's backfired. They've declared bankruptcy, right? And especially when the service that a company provides appears to be unimpeded and working pretty well on a local basis, you wonder, well, what the heck went wrong on a national basis? Why did you run out of money? Becomes kind of the question. Well, I was thinking about that, and you would think that these issues here really all have absolutely nothing to do with each other. But for me, I see patterns here that seem to play across different arenas or disciplines. This one over here, M, represents a client of mine, a commercial client. So she's a local business person who is, she helps people manage their finances in the run-up to and during retirement. Okay, so she helps retirees or near retirees deal with money stuff. How to avoid paying too many taxes, how to get enough returns that you're going to be able to retire, stuff like that. And she's basically at a place where she's wanting to give her business a facelift. She approached me a couple weeks ago because we had a really good relationship 10 years ago when I sort of helped her initially create her web presence and things like that. And then she kind of went down the road where she was sort of following best practices in terms of social media, creating a quote-unquote marketing funnel, which is a real hot word today. And she has a lot of things that she's been spending money on, like Facebook ads and things like that, where there's not only is it not really giving her a good return on her investment, but the fact is she barely knows if it's working, let alone how well. You know what I mean? So people that are in a small business like that typically don't usually do a great job of, like for, in all the years I've been in business, you know, I've asked clients from time to time, I'll say, hey, by the way, you know, when you get a customer, say somebody calls you, you know, do you just say to them, hey, by the way, how'd you hear about us? And the answer is always no. Like in 30 years, I've maybe ever had one person go, oh yeah, you know, we always ask that because we want to know we want to know what's working, you know, in our advertising, for example. Nobody does that. You know, you see, it would shock you. You know, it would shock you to learn how really inept most business people are about their own business. Okay. How does that relate to the computer issue? Well, it kind of does, because when you look at what's going wrong with software, you sort of ask yourself what the mentality of the developers was. What are they thinking about? What are they trying to accomplish, right? You know, when you consider that the features that are touted as the most exciting in Krita 5, they do work, and I am clearly getting work done with them. Okay, so I'm not saying it's garbage. But it's also true that if you go beyond, as I said before, just a toy project, in other words, if it gets even a little bit complicated, you tend to wind up with lock conditions, if not crashes. Okay. And there are things that Krita's doing pretty well now that it's done very poorly for many years, such as resource management. So what do I mean by resource management? Well, resource management means when I go into Krita and I hit the brush and then this pops up, I want to know pretty reliably what brushes are going to appear here, for example. Okay. And it would be, you would think it would be shocking if it were even possible to say, run the software and this list is one set of brushes one time, and then you run the software again and it's a different set of brushes and you don't know why it changed. Things like that. Okay. Well, that sort of thing's been replete in Krita for years. Okay. So why does this happen? Well, developers tend to love stuff that's opaque because the development process, part of the attraction of it and the fun of it, is making your tool do stuff, right? It's making it do something cool or clever or useful. So in a program like Krita, you tend to have a very opaque system. And when we say opaque, that means that it isn't transparent. It isn't obvious under the hood how it works. So in other words, if you were going to manage resources like a list of brushes that are your favorite brushes, the most transparent thing would be that there would be a text file in Krita's main application folder, for example. So I'm just giving you an example of what would be a transparent solution to that problem. So you've got a text file, and the text file just has a list of brush names, right? So when you load Krita, there it is. Okay. If you have an opaque system that manages how you customize brushes and then decide what your favorites are and how you categorize them and things like that, you potentially have a fairly complicated tree of options. Okay, not unlike this tree over here that organizes the layers in your file. If the system of managing that is opaque, then what that means to you as the user is you don't get to have any control over it except to the extent that the developers did a good job of implementing the tools from within the software to manage it. And it turns out that often is not what happens. It turns out that there are bugs, and that's normal. And so the problem isn't that there are bugs or it doesn't quite work well or it's not reliable. The problem is that you need a way to work around the fact when it fails. When you have a system that's transparent, that's a text file on your hard drive in the application folder that is known, okay? So it's not buried somewhere in the system folders, or it's not, God forbid, like with Windows, it's actually stored in the system registry, which is a binary database that you can't get to unless you kind of really know what you're doing, right? When it's transparent, it's like a text file, and you go, oh, well, if the tool that I'm using, Krita in this case, isn't doing its job well, then do I at least have a way to work around that and do its job for it? And in that scenario, what you would do is you'd open up the text file and just type in the name of the brush. You got to do a little homework because you got to go look at what the name of the brush is and make sure you type the right name, right? So you have a little work to do. But in that scenario, you actually are able to solve the problem. You reload Krita, and all of a sudden your brushes are what you wanted. So now that solution is both transparent, and it's also fundamentally portable. In other words, in that scenario, you could take an installation of Krita, just copy the whole Krita folder to another machine, and literally your whole working environment would come back up, reproduced on another machine. Okay, that's the way it really ought to work. Okay, but that type of solution is not, from a development standpoint, it's not particularly elegant. It's not cool. Okay, text files aren't cool. Transparency isn't cool. What's cool is working with the development tools within your platform or whatever to do something cool. And then your quest is to do it in a way that makes the user go, oh man, that's so cool. You want them to be delighted with what you did programmatically. The problem is that as a developer, especially a younger developer, the odds that you're going to implement the cool thing in a cool way that everyone agrees is cool, and especially agrees with your decisions as to what even is cool, the odds of that are very, very, very small. The odds are that somebody's going to disagree about what's cool, or you're going to make a mistake in implementing it so that it's not implemented well and it's unreliable, and you actually wind up having this negative experience instead of a positive experience for your users. Okay, so what's the point? Well, the point is that it turns out that transparency, and basically if you think about code, the most boring, non-performant code that is reliable and, let's say, grokkable. In other words, like the transparency example I just gave. If the software turns out to not do its job well, you have a way to sort of override it, right? That level of grokkability and reliability for a professional in the long run turns out to be vastly more important than performance or fancy schmancy cool new features. Okay? So as cool as the transform masks are in Krita, for example, I would much rather have an extremely, extremely, extremely stable and reliably grokkable and customizable version of Krita that doesn't have the transform mask. I'd rather have that because I can always do my translation. If I really need to move things around with keyframe interpolation, I can always do it over here in Tahoma. And guess what? In the real world, in Hollywood studios or whatever that are doing this type of work, this is what they do. I mean, they have a suite of a lot of different tools, some of which are actually custom coded in-house, especially with bigger companies like, Industrial Light and Magic or whatever. And the reason they do that is because that interchange between tools where you sort of use the best tool for the job at hand is just kind of what you do. So getting back to how this applies to business, one of the problems that you have in business is that when a business is starting to do well, like Red River was, there's a couple things that can go wrong. Okay, one of the things, by the way, that goes wrong is they go public. When a company goes public, they're highly incentivized. You take a company that has had delighting the customer as their top priority for years, let's say. Okay, when they go public, well, why do you go public? Well, the reason you go public is because you want to grow. Okay, so the idea is to grow, and this is green because green means money, 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 money. But in order to grow, the question is, what does grow look like? Okay, this actually comes back to animation in a very, very important way, because I want to kind of hide this, but how are you going to grow? Are you going to scale, or are you going to duplicate? I would argue that in most cases, it's provable that duplicating is always better than scaling. So scaling, in other words, says we want to build a bigger machine. We want to take a machine that's working, and we want to increase the scale of that machine as a single functional unit, let's say. Whereas it probably turns out that your smaller machine that's working well because there's a lot of interchanging moving parts, just like the software I was describing a moment ago. It probably turns out that taking that simpler but smaller machine and simply duplicating it in a new location probably makes more sense. And we see that in bold relief when we look at animation. Because when we look at animation, you think about, okay, well, let's just bring this home now and talk about animation. If I have an animation situation, which I do obviously, where I'm creating a show, and say, well, okay, well, what does it take to create a show? Well, it takes all of these things. We create a script. Somebody's got to write the script. Everything we're talking about boils down to minutes and hours. What are you doing with your minutes and your hours? That's all it is. Is talent important? Yes. But it's not that important. Because you can improve your talent. You can improve your skill. You can practice. You can draw better. You can even resort to kind of copying and changing a little bit so you don't violate copyrights, work that other people have done just to basically save yourself either work or the requirement of skill, right? In other words, just practically speaking, there's always ways to mitigate the fact that you're not as good at XYZ as you wish you were. There's always a way. Okay, I say it again. There's always a way to mitigate that problem. So let's just assume out of the gate that that's not a problem, that we can find a way. So you're going to take a script, you're going to probably create a storyboard. When you think about animation, you got to create these shots, which for me, to pencil test a shot usually takes about half an hour to an hour, and a couple more hours to do ink and paint usually, and then it depends on if I have to do a custom background painting, blah, blah, blah. But basically, you can quantify it. You can quantify how long it takes to do a shot. Pencil test, ink and paint, you could say maybe FX. Once you have a shot rendered out, then we go to an edit step. You're editing your show in your video editor. And then you got to add music, which you got to get somewhere. You got to add voices. You're going to do post-production, more effects, glows, particle effects, color correction, yada, yada, yada. So at the end of the day, all of this can be quantified. So think about the problems that this creates. If you're out there in YouTube land and you want to be part of something cool, okay, which means you either have a strong vision of something you want to create or you want to be part of something that's cool, okay. Well, we have practical considerations because I'm unusual in the fact that I happen to be able to do every single one of these steps. Okay, so I know that's really unusual, and so that's actually an interesting fact in the sense that I am not duplicatable. Not very, anyway. So it's doing what I'm doing the way I do it would be enormously difficult to duplicate, because the whole idea would be to find someone else out there who actually can do it all. Now, when we were talking to Yvette last night on the live stream, Yvette's one of those people that's kind of that way. She's a writer. She's kind of delving into animation, and she's also a musician. So she actually is one of those rare individuals who kind of has the ability to do everything. But those types of people are extremely rare. So the reality is normally you need this. One way or another, you need a team. Well, if you're going to have a team, now you're back to the same problem that Red Rock has. Or not Red Rock, I'm sorry, Red River. Which is that if you want to grow, which means you want to do something that's bigger than what you can do by yourself, right? What do? Well, the reason corporations like Red River go to the bank and they borrow large sums of money is so that they can scale. Well, you as an animator have the same problem. You're saying, well, I can animate or I can draw, but I think it was Tiny Sal the other day who said, well, but I need a script. And I sort of smacked down that objection and said, no. You can come up with a script very easily. And on and on and on. And that's true that this animation project looks massively huge. And it kind of is. But on the other hand, number one, it can be quantified. You can really pin down to specifically, within a range, how long every single one of these steps take. And you can do the math and you can figure out, okay, this is how many man hours are actually required to do this job. For me, I've figured out if I was literally working full time, I'm pretty sure I could generate a 24-minute cartoon episode in 4 months. I don't work on this full time, but if you take what I have done and sort of scale it out and do the math, that's what you come up with. At the rate I'm doing it, it's going to take closer to a year or so to generate a full episode, although I'm seeing that improve somewhat. I'm seeing things speed up a bit. But getting back to this question, does it make sense to scale or does it make sense to duplicate? Well, if you can find a way to put together a team, then it probably makes more sense to duplicate, because finding this team is again enormously difficult. To find people that, I shouldn't say it's enormously difficult. You can find them, but this is where it gets tricky, and why we are going to tend to languish in the world where we're not kind of like doing what we really want to do, is that what you're going to find is that the people that are provably capable or have any track record of doing each of these things probably are working, right? So they're not necessarily available to be part of your project. And it's further difficult because they have to believe in you. They have to believe in, unless you're going to pay them. So that's what Red River does. They go to the bank and they take out a $10 million loan because ostensibly they're going to grow. But instead of having their business model focused on the duplication of a working machine in another locality, you wind up with this state of affairs. And this is what will happen with your animation project too. It's literally the same problem. You can think of it this way. You've got the administrative side. Okay, this is you. Okay, this is you who maybe somehow you got a script either written or acquired or whatever, and ultimately at the end of the day, you're the one who has to either pay somebody or find a way to get something done, and not only that, but you have to make the creative decisions too. Okay, and then down here you've got the implementation side. For Red River, they've got corporate headquarters in Texas, and they have a lot of people who make a lot of money, millions of dollars a year, who are on this side of this line. Those people are not necessarily highly incentivized to make sure that the people that are on the street doing the work do as well as possible. As long as especially if they're very short-term thinking, which most people are, they're not really thinking about the long-term or the greater good. So as long as they're getting their $1 million salaries, not to be cynical about it, but I'm just practically, what would you do if you're getting a $10 million a year salary and the company's starting to fall apart, and let's say you've been reasonably wise with your money so that if the company did fall apart, you're set for life. Okay, let's just say, do you really care if the company goes to pot? Do you really care? No, you don't care. Because you're not thinking about all these people on the street in a local town that are actually doing the work. This is the problem with going public. When a company goes public, all of a sudden they have shareholders. This side of the equation is owned by the shareholders. Okay? So you have a company that has spent maybe several years implementing. Okay? They've been implementing. They've been on the street creating a product or a service that absolutely delights the customer to the point where they've been able to grow. And now they get hungry, and they get, especially if they get bad advice, somebody comes in and says, oh, you should grow. Grow is the most important thing. Big deal. You want to grow. And so you say, okay, well, let's go public. And now we, as the people that started the company, overnight, we're rich, at least on paper. We can't cash in our stocks immediately because that would be illegal. But on paper, we're pretty rich now all of a sudden. Well, the problem is that these shareholders, for the most part, are not invested in this. Think about this for a minute. Really ponder what I'm saying here. Those shareholders are not invested in this. They are not invested in the idea that the company is creating great products or services and delighting more and more customers and growing organically by just having more and more people want what they sell. That is not the shareholders' primary incentive. The shareholders' incentive is, I bought the stock for $10, and if the stock rises in value in the stock market to 30, I just tripled my money. So there is a balance between the financial side of the equation and the implementation side of the equation. But the important thing to understand here is that driving incentives, the strongest incentives that are driving the whole machine, are on the administrative side or the financial side, let's say, of the equation. So the minute a company goes public, it's not that it always happens, but I would argue that it usually happens, is that their biggest incentives, because remember, these are the owners of the company now. These people own the company. So whatever happens in those board meetings, the decisions that are made have to serve these people. Who is not being served necessarily now? Well, this little worthless, no good, who cares about this person called a customer. In other words, the person who used to be the most important by far to the company is now literally, and not because of any malice on anyone's part, but just because of the incentives that are in play, the person that used to be the most important to the company is now the least important to the company. Well, this is generally what you see happen when companies grow and scale. Now, how does this relate to M? M being a local small business providing financial services who had a nice little business that was growing fine, and she was happy and basically happy. Okay, so then she buys into a bunch of rhetoric that says your website needs to look this way. You need to have a marketing funnel. You need to do this. You need to do Facebook ads that feed your funnel. And now you have to do what's called dripping. So now the people that you get people to request a little little packet that you mail out to them. Probably costs you about $15 to mail out this packet. Okay, so you mail out this packet, and then what the process through the website that gave you the ability to have their email address and their address as well, so you can mail them the packet, results in a situation that you've been told is a good thing, and that's called the drip. Well, why is it a good thing? Is it because customers love the drip, or is it because your advisors have told you that, well, this is how you do your marketing funnel. This is what we do nowadays. These are best practices. Okay. Well, what does drip mean? Drip means that the people that ordered the packet, okay, which is a physical, like a little booklet and, you know, a bunch of white papers, right? We love that term. We have white papers that tell us, you know, so we're telling you we're the experts and this is how we're going to help you ostensibly. Well, by virtue of the fact that you got the packet, you're now in the drip, which means that you're getting an email about every 2 days. Every 2 days, you're getting an email that's obviously a boilerplate email that's not really from this person, but it, of course, has her name on it. But you're getting this drip. And the idea of the drip is that in the marketing funnel, this is going to result in you sooner or later picking up the telephone and calling M and saying, yeah, you know what? You sent me this packet, which, by the way, and I've in my counseling with her, I've asked her, look, do we know for a fact that the people read this book or this material? And how have you seen people respond to you in the sense that having read this material, they're better equipped to ask the right questions that allow you to help and serve them? And you know what the answer was? I don't know. I'm not joking. I'm serious here. This is totally common in business. I have no idea if people read it, and I can't give you any sort of analytics that would suggest that the fact that they've read it has put them in a better position to either contact me or for me to serve them. Either one. So we send this stuff out with no idea if it works at all, and then we drip on the people for weeks on end until out of either they unsubscribe out of annoyance, you know. Press kit, Amar, is not a bad name for it. It's kind of like a press kit, but it's a physical thing that probably costs her about $15 to generate and send out to every single prospect. Every prospect. Now for her, what's interesting about this to me is that my strength is not in this. Okay, this is why does my YouTube channel only have 3,000 subscribers? Why don't I have 300,000? Well, because I don't do the marketing funnel. Yeah, I'm kind of toying with it a little bit with the Discord and setting up Patreon and things like that allow people to basically interact with me in a way that's congruent with these so-called best practices that the so-called pundits that know everything there is to know about it would tell you should do if you want to grow. I'm not really doing it because I expect it to work. I'm just doing it because I'm trying to patch a few holes in my system where people's ability to just communicate with me and appreciate the content I provide may be enhanced a little bit. Okay. This is not my strength. The marketing funnel is not my strength. My strength is this. This is what I'm good at. Picking up a phone and making sales calls. Dealing with clients directly. And so when we began to look at her sales process, you got to remember that at some point, all of this is going on for months. And I asked her this interesting question. I said, well, do you know the people that have advised you to take this path with your website, this path with your advertising, this path with what you mail out, this path with your drip, 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 that ultimately hopefully leads to a customer? Do you know for a fact that this entire methodology works for them? Because they claim it works, that this is best practice, this is what you should be doing. Okay, and I asked her, do you know for a fact that this is effective for them, not because these steps are actually qualitatively effective, but because they just do so damn much of it that it turns out that gaining a 0.5% response rate, which is totally normal for direct mail advertising, has been for 100 years, does it turn out that it's actually just large numbers that make it work for the people that are advising you? So do you know that these are actually best practices? Are they best practices given the fact that you're feeding a number of people into the funnel that's 100 times bigger than the actual number of people you are feeding into the funnel? And the answer to that, again, was the same answer. Don't know. Well, this is how people run their businesses. You know? It's not really a criticism, actually, because the reality is that this system does work to a degree. And so for somebody in that position, the best way to patch the hole, the best way to keep the boat from sinking, as it were, would be to fix things at the telephone step. In other words, what I said is, can you trim, how can you trim this down to the minimum that's actually effective, trim this down to the minimum that's actually effective, and actually maybe cut through all of it directly to just a very, very brief email or phone call that is very craftily designed to filter out the bad prospects and lure in the good prospects. And immediately, not only have you made a more efficient system, but you've also created an environment that's what you want your business to be, which is her interacting on a personal level, because she's a people person, with human beings where she's actually able to help them. And my basic advice or view for her is, you're basically, none of these things are bad things, but basically you're swimming in bullshit, doing things that people have told you to do that you don't know if they work at all, let alone how well. And it's caused you to buy into a system or an idea that is fundamentally opposed to who you are as a person and what you want out of your business. And my argument is, if you're not happy doing what you're doing, this process, no matter, even if you're making money, you're probably going to run out of gas sooner or later. So these are the types of ways that we all go off the rails, and you can wind up wasting 10 years doing the wrong thing because you haven't really done the hard work of looking at yourself and figuring out, and this goes back to things I've talked about over the last couple of weeks here on the live stream, is what do you want? What do you really want to do? This comes back down to this. Look at this. What do you want to do with your minutes and your hours, friends? And by the way, I'm not even going to look at the chat right now because I don't want to get sidetracked into trying to answer questions or anything like that. This is really important. If you're trugging along in life and you're a creative person and it's important to you to do something, you want to do something, right? You want to create something. You want to and you'd love to turn it into some coin. You'd love to be able to get paid for. So let me describe somewhat in emotional terms who you might be. You're a person who either says, and I'm the same person in a different way, you're a person who says, "Oh my gosh, I can do this. I know I can." Or this, or all of them, whatever. Animation. Say, "I know I can do this." But there's nobody out there who recognizes, who sees in me what I see in myself. Okay, so what I'm here to tell you today for sure is that what you see in yourself is correct. Don't doubt for a minute that your belief that you continually probably talk yourself out of in different ways, your belief that you have the ability to contribute something awesome is true. I want you to get that through your head. It's true. But the problem is that you do have to overcome all of the logistics of a world and a universe that isn't necessarily lining up to make it easy for you. And in point of fact, if you're honest, you'd say they'd be stupid if they did. Think about it. If you have the ability to do a pencil test, let's say, but you suck at everything else, well, I'm not going to, if I'm going to hire you, I'm only going to hire you for this. And then I am in this position over here. Let me zoom out here, where I have the responsibility on the administrative side of this ugly graphic that I'm creating here. I have the responsibility to make a decision. When you deliver that pencil test, I have to make a decision. It doesn't matter how much I like you. If the pencil test sucks, then I have to send it back to you. Or say, you know what, I guess it's not going to work out. So the problem we have as creatives who are, essentially, kind of wasting time on YouTube is that if you were really, 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 and I state this emphatically as this is just the way the world works. If you were really, really super good at whatever it is you think you want to do, you'd probably be doing it. Like somebody would hire you, right? And so the problem is the people who are actually good at it are not necessarily looking to be involved with your little enterprise. Okay? And so you really have a conundrum. For me in particular, my solution to that is this. Is simply that if I do the work by myself, it doesn't really matter how long it takes, because if I create this show, once it gets on the street, I'm going to have enough street cred just from the fact that I got it done, let alone how good it is. Just accomplishing it alone creates a certain amount of, as I say, street cred to where people all of a sudden are open to having a conversation with you. And then even then, creative collaboration still may not be a thing. There's the mix of personalities. I mean, there's a lot involved. So, is there a point to all this? Well, yeah, the point to it is that every single one of you guys really should probably do two things that M needs to do. Okay? You need to ask this question, and you really need to do some soul searching. Number one, what do I want? In other words, and I'm coming down to this, minutes and hours. What do I want? What do I really, literally enjoy just getting lost in doing with my minutes? Because if you can't find that, everything else you do is just postponing the moment when you're once again disillusioned and again confronted with that same question. Okay, and then in conjunction with what do I want is perhaps would ask, what is my strength? What's your areas of strength and weakness? Okay. You must ask yourself these questions and be as honest as you can. Because and what do you want isn't just necessarily what you want to do creatively in terms of, do you like to draw or do you like to write or whatever. It's also got to do with your preferences people-wise. Are you a person who really truly loves being part of a team? Or are you a person who is more like me, where I'm more of an individualist who really appreciates other extremely talented or skilled practitioners. Okay? I appreciate really skilled people. But I also, I'm probably biased in the sense that I've been in business by myself for 30 years. Okay? So having done it this way for 30 years, and having tried various types of collaborative situations over those years, I would say I'm not a people person, in the sense that I have not, put it this way, I've never seen a situation where collaboration for me actually turned out to be that much of a win. Because, and that's actually this thing I had written before the live stream started, because the live stream, I got started on the wrong foot and had to restart the live stream, but I was looking at this very question of synergy. Synergy, that's what collaboration really is. What are you looking for with synergy? You're looking for the idea that if we put our two heads together, we're going to create a situation that comes up with ideas and quality that is greater than either of us individually could have achieved. Okay? And so the practicality of it is the possibility of achieving that type of creative synergy is balanced against the problem of the time suck, which is that when you sort through the people that maybe, let's say, joined the team but turned out not to be really up to the task or whatever, you have this whole social component that takes time to manage and work with and feel out and see if it's going to work and try to make changes. And the people that didn't deliver, you say, well, your pencil test isn't quite where it needs to be. I think you can do it, but we're not quite there yet. So come back to me in a couple days with a revision. And then that person, let's just say, has an attitude problem. Say, well, you suck. You suck and you don't know what you're talking about, and I quit. That's not a criticism. It is absolutely their right and privilege to tell you that you suck and quit if that's what they want to do. They should do that if that's really how they feel about it. Because you don't have a great working relationship anyway. Now, I would argue that person who has that attitude probably has some growing up to do in some certain ways. And the attitudinal decision point that they just hit and responded to with the reaction is one that they're going to keep running into over and over and over and over and over and over again in their life until they get it right. In fact, actually, interestingly, I didn't think about this till just now, but Tanika, I forget Tanika's last name, but he's got a YouTube channel. But Tanika actually put a video on YouTube just recently about this very thing. You can find him if you search that, you'll find his channel. But he posted a very, very frank and honest video about getting fired from jobs where basically he had ego problems and wasn't necessarily the best team player or whatever, and got canned. And in this particular YouTube video, he's talking about the fact that I've kind of learned my lesson from that, and he's talking about the lessons he's learned from it. When I watched that video, I had a jaundiced attitude towards it because I knew personally that I had approached Tanika about some things related to animation, and his response was none at all. He didn't even answer my email. So I'm like, okay, for me, that's his prerogative. He doesn't have to answer my email if he doesn't want to. What do I care? But I kid you not, as a guy that has been in business by myself, for myself, for 30 years, I can tell you that how people communicate tells you a lot about that person. Like instantly. You can viscerally get a read on somebody by how they respond to communications and whether they communicate. So that's not to criticize Tanika. I think he's an extremely talented guy, and I think he's learning some hard lessons in his life that's allowing him to move in a better direction professionally, and I'm glad for him. I hope it works out. I know he just took a position because he announced that on his YouTube channel, and hopefully this is going to be a better experience for him. I wish him all the best because he's a really talented kid. Really talented kid. And I want him to do well. And I not only want him to do well, but I want him to enjoy the ride as well. But anyway, that comes back basically to you guys. What do I want to do and what's my strengths? So for me, the problem is when I look at Marsha's, I shouldn't have said her name. I didn't mean to say her name. Okay, it's Marsha. M stands for Marsha. I'm not saying her last name, so that doesn't reveal anything. But when I think about her problem, this is a big part of it. Here's a person who's gone through 10 years and realized that what I'm doing both does not capitalize on my strengths, and I'm not particularly enjoying it. You think about that. You think about you've spent 10 years taking all the advice about the freaking marketing funnel and doing the Facebook ads and revamping your website and following all these best practices, and at the end of the day somebody says, well, how's that turned out for you? How's the business going? And the answer is, I either don't know or I don't like it. It's one or the other. What do you do with that? Well, my advice to her is the same advice I have for you guys. Is get back to basics and ask yourself this really hard question of what do you want and what is my strength? Now, the truth of the matter is, if you are ready to participate in the world of animation at a level or in a manner that you probably desire, then you probably would not be here right now, actually. You wouldn't be listening to me. Okay? So that means you're somebody who might be, somebody like Amar, or a lot of the people here actually, who are really pretty talented, okay? But there's various things about the skill side of your story and the emotional side of your story that are not serving you well, that are preventing you from being able to advance your story. Because the reality is that you create your story. And this is why I said the other day that whatever condition you're currently in, on the one hand, the odds are enormously strongly would suggest that whatever condition you're in, probably you can look at your choices you made in the past and probably that's what got you there. In other words, it's your fault. That's almost certainly true. And I don't know, it's very rare that you have a case where there are any externalities that give you, that are so disruptive that they actually provide a valid excuse for a condition that you're actually unhappy with. It does happen. I look at Valerie, for example, as somebody who at the age of 14 was in a massive a car accident where one person died and blah blah blah. So this is something that she didn't ask for. She didn't create that. There were other people involved in the situation who absolutely, provably, definitely did. Where all of the situation that day said, "Don't get in that car and don't go," and they did it anyway. And then this horrible thing happened. But that's a whole other story. And of course, it's all speculation. You can't know what would have happened, right? Duh. But usually, these are the tiny, tiny, tiny exceptions. Almost never happens. So not only does getting clear about what you want tend to begin to attract it into your life, which I think it does, and you can look at that esoterically or you can look at that practically. The practical side is, if I know absolutely what I want, then I start, this is what I talked about the other day, as I talked about belief. You have to believe that what you want is two things. It has to be both possible. Let's switch brushes here. It has to be possible and it has to be permissible. If you have those two things in place, then you have a good chance of getting to where you want to be. If you don't believe that what you want is actually possible for you, and especially emotionally, if you don't believe it's permissible for you, in other words, there's reasons about your life that you sort of talk yourself out of, thinking that it's okay to chase after what you really want. If these things are not true, then what are you not going to do? You're not going to seek opportunities. You're not going to seek synergies. You're not going to seek employment. You're not going to seek opportunities because you don't actually believe that either you deserve it or that it can happen. And so you don't try. And because you don't try, your odds of achieving it drop to zero. They actually drop to zero. If you try, your odds of achieving it actually approach 100%, because what happens is you keep running into barriers along the way, and those barriers, instead of stopping you, cause you to think around the problem, just like I was doing with Krita this morning. I'm sort of thinking around things that go wrong with my tools, right? You think around it, and then you try again, and all of this sort of hardens you, toughens you up, to where you become, through this process, the kind of person who actually deserves what you want. And nobody, usually, you can talk about the lottery or whatever, but people who get what they want who don't deserve it, actually it usually backfires in spectacular ways. It's why, we know statistically it's true. Most people who win the lottery wind up broke again in a couple of years. They just piss all the money away, and because they're not emotionally and psychologically equipped to handle the finances. The person who's like, debt free and very fiscally conservative and all that sort of thing, who wins the lottery, is the person who will keep the money, because what they'll do is they won't go spend it all. They'll keep doing with that new money what they've been doing with the money they had. And that comes back to this issue of what's your strength. What you're saying is, it's kind of like a Bible principle, actually. He who's faithful with little will be faithful with much. It's kind of true. Not definitely trying to go all Bible here or anything, but it is true that if you're utilizing where you're strong well, then you're in an enormously better position to expand your skill set and expand your opportunities, right? If you're squandering your strengths, or you're squandering your opportunities today, and again, it could be that listening to somebody like me on YouTube actually for you represents squandering, because you're not actually doing anything to move towards what's important for you in your life. That's a real possibility. I don't discount that. And if that's you, by all means, please leave and go work on what it is that's important to you. But all these things work together and feed each other. All of these things work together and feed each other. And where does it leave us? Well, it really leaves us in a bit of a bittersweet place. And the bittersweet place is that this is all you have, actually. This is what you have. The person who says to me, if I had time, I would do this, I just laugh at them. I think you so don't get it. You so don't get it. It turns out, if you've noticed, that every single human being gets the same 24 hours every day. And when you complain about your job, don't forget that the job you have is a job you wanted. Okay, this is really important to understand. If you really want to understand the law of attraction and how it can almost get metaphysical, you have to understand it from a practical standpoint. So people say, I visualized what I want and it's not manifesting in my life, right? If you say, I want X, but what you're getting is Y, if you want to take away the esoteric component and get down to what's really going on, here's the almost certain likely truth. The truth is that you actually do want Y, because Y gives you certain dividends that you're satisfied with. Okay? So in practical terms here on YouTube, what this means is X would be, I want to create a show. I want to be an animator, or it could be a job. But you either want to create something or you want to have an opportunity that is creative. So I want this. I want this, and I want this to be my full-time job. I want to make my money with it. I want this to be my life. And I talked about this the other day a little bit, but this is really, really important to understand. Is that if you go on a forum or you hop on Facebook or whatever and you post something and you get this little endorphin spike in your brain and you get an emotional dividend from that, it actually will prevent you from aggressively seeking this. Okay, so if you're a normal person, you will be satisfied with this rather than working for this, because this takes effort and this doesn't. Okay, so red, effort. We don't like effort. This is easy. Dividends are easy. Rewards are hard. Okay? So I say all this because this is the state that we are all in all the time. Life is a continuing, unfolding evolution where you evaluate, where am I at today, where do I want to be, and how the hell did I get to where I am right now? Because the truth is you created it. You chose it. You're pretty late. We're over an hour into it. Sifter. And so if you want to know in practical terms, well, what do I do? What do I do? Well, it comes back to this evaluation. Where can I need to hit the F12 key and look at this mess. It comes down to this. What do I want and what is my strength? You have to do a brutally brutally honest evaluation of what your current skill set is and what is it that you actually want to accomplish. Okay? And by the way, to be, if what you want to accomplish is pretty humble, I just want to have fun as a little hobby making animations. Geez, Dave, what are you even getting all bent out of shape about? I would say, great. You're a lucky person because you're really, really clear about what you want. Most people aren't. Most people are not clear about what they really want. That is precisely why the problem of rewards and dividends happens. You say you want this, but the truth is, the dirty little secret is you actually love this. You love this. Because this takes a long time and hard work, and this is instant. And so whenever you say, I want this, but I'm getting this, I say, no, actually, you want this quite a bit, actually. You still want this. I'm not saying it's not true. You do want it, but you don't want it bad enough to eschew this in exchange for this, because it turns out that's a requirement. Where it becomes complicated for someone like M, I think this is really interesting, is that the best practices that she's being advised in business suggest that this whole world, this whole social networking world of dividends, is in fact the pathway to what she actually wants, which is success in her business. And I'm telling you, I don't believe it's true. I think it's wrong. I think some people do it and it kind of works, but the only reason it works is because they get really, really big numbers. So if you do enough Facebook ads and you play this funneling game enough, it's fine. You can build a fine business model on that approach. The problem is for somebody like her and like you as a creative person watching this live stream, is that what you're going to find is that this gives you maybe some short-term satisfaction because of those social dividends, those little endorphin spikes you get, but it does not make you happy. And over a period of time, you are going to get disillusioned and you're going, is this all there is? Is this it? Because I don't know, this isn't quite working for me. And it's a balance. It's a balance between the social side of it, the people side of it, and the rewarding side of it, the creative side of it, the work. It's a balance between work and people. Work stuff, people stuff. And it depends on your temperament. Some people are more people, they're more extroverts and that sort of thing, and other people are more grungy, individualist sort of loners. I'm kind of somewhere in between. I'm sort of in between with probably at the end of the day, once you really look at all the pros and cons of everything, I'm probably more in the loner camp for sure. But, having said that, the right situation with the right incentives and the right skill sets and people, the collaborative thing can be quite wonderful. It can be a lot of fun, In the entertainment space, that tends to be short-term projects that have a beginning, and you work through it, and then you come to the end, and then the group separates. I call this, actually, I have a name for this I came up with years ago. I call it the bubbles principle. And the bubbles principle says that, so you're in your own little creative bubble floating around, and then there's somebody over here in their creative bubble floating around, and every once in a while you get a situation that looks like this, where it makes sense for the bubbles to stick together. And if it's a good combination, well, let's put it the other way. If it's a bad combination, then this is what happens. Both bubbles pop. If it's a good combination, they join together and they actually start rising for a while. But then once you get to the end of the project, it becomes appropriate for them each to go their separate ways again. It's very rare. It can happen, but it's kind of rare that this actually turns into this, where you wind up with an organization. It can happen, though, but the problem is, in order for this to happen, usually you've got to have money behind it. You got to have somebody with deep pockets who really believes not only in the concept, but believes in the team, believes in the individuals involved to where they're willing to finance the darn thing. Are you willing to do that? I'm not really willing to do that. I may be too cynical about sort of human nature or whatever, but, that is risky. And the person who takes that risk, by the way, if you hate people like, I don't know, big companies like Disney or whatever, but you gotta concede they've taken some pretty big risks in order to earn the big rewards. And you don't ever want to forget that, because nobody's getting it for free. You know, everybody has to earn it. Okay, so it is 1:20, hour and 20 minutes. All right, I have gone on as long as I care to, so I'm going to discard the spiral notebook, and I don't know how useful it is. I've said what I wanted to say about it. For me, it's a very small, very boring. You know what? If I can just, I tell you the truth, guys. I wanted to get that off my chest. What I really want to do is get it off my chest and have it off my chest for good, right? And by the way, to your comment, Amar, you're correct. She hasn't looked at and studied and been informed by the analytics basically at all. Not at all. I see where you said deliberating, you meant delegating. All of these ventures, the reason I related a small business like M's to a large business like Red River, to the quest we're all on creatively to just create cool stuff, is that the dynamics are the same. It's always fundamentally the same problem, which is, as I said, what do you want to do? It's a powerful and happy person who's extremely clear about what they actually want. Because what they tend to find happens is it starts to come to you surprisingly fast. Once you get really clear about what you want, and it's very practical, because what happens is, because you believe, if you believe it's both possible and it's permissible for you, then you'll take steps. Because you believe it's going to happen, right? And so then you take steps in that direction. So just in practical terms, opportunities just open up. Because you're looking for them. And this is a powerful thing to think about. Just think about what that means. That means that the opportunity was there all along. Do you get it? The opportunity you want in your life is already there. It's just waiting for you. You're the problem. Just get clear about what you want. The resources, the assets, the people, the opportunities are already here. They're around you. It might be halfway across the country. It might be your next door neighbor. It might be your spouse. Whatever. I don't know. But whatever you think you want, I will guarantee you that the means to achieve it is already there. It already exists. And if that's true, and you don't have it, then you must ask yourself who then is to blame. Why is that? Must be something about you. And I mean this very strongly, because I believe this for myself. Every challenge, every shortcoming, every I just look at it like this. I have absolutely nothing to complain about in life. Nothing. Absolutely nothing to complain about. If there's a problem or something's not quite going where it needs to be, it's my fault. And everybody's path is different. The problem that M has is that she's gone for 10 years where, to varying degrees, she's let other people tell her this is how you should run your business. And she's found it both unsatisfying and unsuccessful. She's done okay. She's been plunking along, but, she hasn't been doing as well as she would like, and she hasn't been particularly enjoying the ride recently. Well, that's what happens when you let other people give you advice. So, yeah, Dave, you have to have a Discord. Well, when people said you should have a Discord, I didn't get a Discord. I didn't set up a server. I set up a server when I finally decided that for me, I felt, you know what, I would like a way to basically communicate with these people directly so they don't have to do it through comments on a YouTube video, right? So, when I was ready, that's when I did it. And it's unfolding slowly, and frankly, that's fine. No hurry. Yeah, Amar nailed it. We play the blame game because it pushes the blame off of us. Right, and the reality is that the blame is always on us. And I said this the other day, but I think it bears repeating, is that even if you could prove, even if you could say, well, I can point to a definite externality in my life that was not my fault, that caused a problem, that put me in the situation I am now. Let's just say that's true. Is that an empowering way to look at it? I mean, isn't it way more practical to assume that you're the problem? Because if you assume that you're the problem, then generally speaking, as you look at your situation today, obviously you can actually do something about it if you're the problem. If you harbor the conceit that externalities are actually that important, then all you're doing is I strongly make the argument that literally all you're doing is giving yourself a reason to have excuses so that you can continue to complain. And let me see here. I guess I need that in there for a moment. And complaining serves you because it means that you don't have to look in the mirror and realize that you created your own situation. And I believe me, the emotional aspect of that is quite difficult. You know, it's hard to face the truth. But it's only people who face the truth that actually have a chance of being happy, ever. You know, really. Because you're always in a state of delusion. You know, how long are you going to live in a delusion? I happen to personally believe and contend that most people are literally living their entire lives out in emotionally dysfunctional delusions. I actually do believe that's really, really, really true. I think that I'm sorry, I'm trying to get Krita to not be in this sort of locked state. And so I have a lot of I definitely have a lot of you know, I'm not hard-hearted about it. I've got a lot of empathy for people who struggle in those ways. I give these lectures because what I really want, I would love it, man, if we could get real specific here, where every single person that's subscribed to my channel has a specific project with a specific targeted, probably a deadline would be useful. It's not necessary strictly, but it's useful for most people. Where they've really done the analysis and figured, you see, when you get back down to the whole collaboration thing, the whole problem is, one of the biggest challenges, I think, is that, I know I'm jumping around here, but one of the biggest challenges is that the marketplace doesn't really have much of a place for projects that people that are learning animation tend to do. Like little toy animations that just, you know. So my bias is strongly towards creating stuff like this, where I'm creating a show. And for me, I'm good with that because that is what the marketplace tends to embrace. You know, serial entertainment that's of a certain length that's well established. If you can't do that, most people can't do that because they need a team. So if you can't do that, what have you got? Well, you've got YouTube. You know, you've got short form content, and you basically build your fortune not on creating the very thing that you have told yourself you want to do. You build your fortune on something completely peripheral to what you actually want to do. So just using somebody like Howard Wimshurst as an example, if Howard loves animating, the problem he has is that he's not actually making his money animating for the most part. He's making some money animating, but mostly he's making his money through Patreon or whatever. You know, he's basically growing his YouTube channel. So what happens is the old adage that those who can do and those who can't teach, it's actually kind of true. It's sad, but it is kind of true. And the problem is because you can't make money doing it necessarily. And so you become an authority. So think about what that does in the marketplace, in the YouTube marketplace. What that means is most of the people that are giving you advice and telling you how it is and what you should do are the people who failed at actually doing it themselves. Think about that for a minute. Think about that. Most of the people that you're going to learn from on YouTube are the people that aren't successfully making a living at it in the real world. Especially the people that do a very practiced job of presenting their teachings. Sounds a little cynical, doesn't it? But I think it's probably true, you know. I got to go back over here and get a picture of our blind guy so I get his costume colors right. Sorry guys. Over here, I need to get a picture of the blind man. There he is. We'll just copy that to the clipboard. And go Control V. Hello, I need to do that. Control V. There it is. Okay. So we'll put this, I think, on the top. Yeah, I mean, so for me, what makes me happy, what floats my boat, I think, is just doing what I'm doing now. Not so much the talking part, but I definitely have been finding when I just drill down into the work and sort of get lost, and my brain goes into sort of an alpha state. I do enjoy it. So that's partly why I've been sort of wanting to get some of these ideas off my chest here on the live stream, is so that having gotten them off my chest, I can be done with them and just focus on the work. I don't know. I mean, who knows? I don't even know why people really want to listen to me anyway. You know, I do have a certain amount of experience, I guess, that's probably useful. Let me see here. I want to hit the fill tool, and I think I want to be in behind mode. Yeah, so I can just, yeah, let's do it this way. So I'm gonna better draw that right there. No, the guys I admire are guys like, you know, my heroes, you know, Steve Cannell and Mike Post. The thing I find interesting about my heroes are that Mike Post being the most prolific composer of television soundtracks ever, you know, like by far. And Cannell, who through the 80s and into the 90s was one of the most prolific and successful creators of TV shows. But both of these guys, they were best friends, by the way. Cannell's dead now. He died in, I think, 2010. But what I find really interesting about both of those guys is this is, now hear me guys, listen carefully to this. The interesting thing about Mike Post and Steve Cannell both is they have this in common. Number one, neither one of them are the best at what they do. They're better than average. They're better than average, but they're not elite level. Neither one of them are. Cannell is not that great of a writer, and Mike Post is just okay as a composer as far as I'm concerned. Definitely. Some of Mike Post's disciples, like John Debney, you tell John Debney, he's a chameleon, man. You could say, I want you to sound like Hans Zimmer, I want you to sound like John Williams, I want you to sound like Alan Menken, whatever. Debney can do it. And Debney, he cut his teeth working for Post. So he was basically ghost scoring TV shows for Post back in probably the 80s, I would say. But both of these guys were both actually just okay at what they did, but they both just loved the work. They just loved, you know, in Post's case, to just create music, and in Cannell's case, to just write. He did a lot more associated with creating television, but basically he thought of himself as a writer. You know, he was a writer at heart. Oops, got a leak. And I really respect that, because these are the kind of guys who did not and would not today, and Mike Post still doesn't. He's not active socially. You can't find him. You can't even find him on social media or anything. He's too busy doing the work. He's having too much fun to this very day just creating music. Right? So he's not about, you know, being Mr. Social Butterfly. So it's a real pure love of and pursuit of the craft. And I think that's a cool thing. Okay, I probably should solo this guy and go like that, because look at what I did. Oh, I'm so silly. And that is my desire for you guys here. I want you guys to be like that. I want you guys to just be doing what you're doing because you love doing it, you know? And because that is the bestest path to getting opportunities to do it either more professionally or on a bigger scale or whatever. Because then you have your moral compass in the right place, where you work on it and you practice and you're doing what you're doing for the right reasons, which is basically just to be sufficiently good at it that, for crying out loud, someone would actually want to work with you. You know, or hire you or whatever. That's what you want. You want to just be able to do what you do. Boy, I'm having to do a lot of redundant painting here. I better check this. Yeah. Let me see here. This is stupid. I should have put the paint on another layer, but since I'm committed to it, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go like this, Control C, and then I'm going to go to the next frame, and I'm going to go Edit, Paste into Active Layer. And I'm just going to do that a few times. I really need to put a hotkey on this for sure. Yeah. So I'm having to paint each of these lip sync frames separately, which is like, okay, Dave, how could you be that stupid? Really? You're that dumb? Yeah. Yeah, I'm that dumb. Sorry. But, so this is what you do. You just do whatever you got to do to get the job done, baby. All right, so now over here we got the problem of a leak that is sticking out like a sore thumb. So we could have done the same thing here where we did a cut and paste, or we could have just put it all on a different layer. These are all valid approaches. No problem. And it's not like it really takes that long to do this. So, okay, so so now we're hype with most YouTube channels, fast talking, infotainment. Yeah, I mean, like I tell you guys, you know, I'm podcasting. I mean, what am I really doing here? I'm just podcasting. Okay, so the visual part of it is just, you know, you're lucky if you get the if you're into the visual part, because, you know, it's almost incidental to the blabbing, at least on a day like today. That's for sure. So we got the old man here. Okay, so now we got to make some choices. I mean, obviously it would have been a little smarter to put him on his own layer, but let's say there's his flesh tone. We'll turn this, so we'll come back here, and I guess what we'll do is we'll keep rolling with the baked in color. Now that's going to be a problem here. That's okay. We've only got 3 frames here, but once we get here, we really need to put it on a separate layer. Yeah. Otherwise, we're going to be doing a lot of extra work. So, why don't we'll bake it in for a bit. So, bakety bake, bake, bake. Da-da-da-da-da. Come on. Okay, so here what we've got to do, I'm only doing it this way because it's a single frame, and I'm not having to do it repeatedly. So there's that. So now this would be, and I need to make sure that his eyes are going to be blocked, and now if I hit the F key, see, that works. Okay, so now we've got a different color for the eyes and for the beard. And so now here, same situation. B key, we just have to, and this is in behind mode, so I'm not actually covering up any of the ink lines, so I can scribble like this and I don't have to worry about going outside the lines. Quite useful. Oops, that was wrong. Okay, actually, Amar, thank you, my friend. I'm actually glad you said that. Okay, I will tell you, buddy, I have the same proclivity. Literally. This is why I've been a little bit harsh with you on this particular point. I absolutely have the same proclivity. I have so many ideas. I mean, I tell you, just in the arena of software development, you know, I have things I feel like I'd like to do, you know, in the coding domain. Believe it or not, has nothing to do with animation. Of course, that's something Tom would relate to because he's a programmer. But so what's the recipe to solve that problem? First of all, let's unpack it a little bit. Why would that be a problem, actually? Why would that be a problem? Well, one reason it'd be a problem is because in your heart of hearts, you feel like if I don't pursue this thing over here, I'm getting old. Maybe I'll become infirm. Who knows what'll happen, but the opportunity to do it will be gone at some future point, right? And I don't want to lose the opportunity, so I feel like I need to do something with it. So I sort of poke at it, what I call kicking at the tires. I kick at the tires of this thing, whatever it is. Okay? Well, at some point you have to come to a firm conclusion and believe, this goes back to the belief thing, you have to truly believe that you are actually doing immeasurable harm to yourself by poking at 75 things instead of focusing on one thing. Now, there is a boredom factor. So in other words, if you do focus, it's like me working on animation. I'm usually good for a couple hours, right? And then I run out of gas. I have to switch gears. So to a degree, switching to something completely different, which might be dealing with my commercial clients, it might be going pump iron, who knows? So there is a balance there, right? But it's pretty well established that if a person has multiple goals, especially in the same arena, as opposed to, people have relationship goals, they have financial goals, they've got creative goals, right? So dealing specifically with what Amar's talking about, when you have this dynamic where you've got these creative ideas, these impulses that you want to do something with, you have to get really, really honest with yourself. And you'd say to yourself, well, actually, it turns out that when I pursue these things, I always pursue them for a little while, and then other aspects of life press in on me, and I actually never get very far with them. And so I've got this mouse on a treadmill situation where I've seen this pattern before. Okay, so I'm talking to myself. This is me. This is actually what goes on in my mind. So to that person, I would say you got to get really honest about yourself that this is not something new. This is a repeating pattern, and that the way that it's bit you in the past, it's going to bite you again. If you don't believe that, then you'll sort of chase down the path. And what you might do even worse is you'll have an idea for a show or a cartoon or whatever it is. You've got an idea, and then because you cannot give it the full attention that it deserves to turn it into something that's a credible venture, okay, you're not that committed to it. So then what you do is you go on Discord or you go on YouTube or you go somewhere and you start talking to people about this great idea that you have, and everybody's like, oh, that's so cool. Oh, that's great. Oh, I can't wait to see it, right? And then you've got your dividend, and then you kind of poke at it a little more, and then you kind of run out of gas, or worse, you get another idea. And so then you go chase down that one. So there's definitely this dynamic where the ease of getting dividends becomes a weapon that's being kind of used against you to keep you from ever actually getting anything done that's credible and competitive. Let's say competitive. I think that there might be an aversion to a mindset of competitiveness, but I think for a lot of us, it's actually a kind of a good way to think about it. You need to be doing whatever you're doing creatively, competitively. If you're doing it shittily, nobody will ever want to buy it from you, okay? They're not going to want to hire you. They're not going to want to, buy your program, whatever it might be. So you might as well you might as well face reality about that. Well, can you do anything well by just poking at it and going out and talking about it and getting social dividends? No, of course not. In other words, here's the best way to think about it that's kind of useful. Ask yourself this. The people that are doing what I wish I could do, or the idea that I've had, this is a really good question you should ask yourself. Think about the people in the real world who are doing the kind of thing you're saying you got an idea about. Now go do a little research. Go talk to those people. Go seek them out. Ask them, what's your day and your hour look like? What do your days and your minutes and your hours look like? What do you actually do with your time? What do you do? Find that out. That would serve you really, 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 really well. Because it cuts through all the bullshit stories that you tell yourself in order to make yourself feel good. And the idea that you have, and by the way, importantly for someone like you, Amar, and again, I put myself in the same category. This idea that you have all these ideas, you know what? Get over yourself. 90% of your ideas suck, okay? I'm talking to myself here. Now, take the attitude that 90% of your ideas suck. They're not that great, okay, buddy? They're okay. They're okay. They could probably be crafted into something good if you really gave them the attention. But you know what? Guess what? Bad news. If you actually took this great idea that you think you have to the real world marketplace, to the people that are actually doing the work and said, hey, I want to sell you my great idea. You know what they're going to say? Excuse me, go put it on that shelf over there with 372 of the exact same idea. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. But no, thank you. That's what they're going to say to you. So the idea of get over yourself is realize this harkens right back to what I was saying 20 minutes ago. What is the key characteristic of the guys that are actually productive, the most successful in the history of the world? Steve Cannell and Mike Post. They both said the same thing. Mike Post said it most cogently. When somebody asked him if he ever goes back into his old work, like, I've got to score a TV show, do you ever go back into the archives and find a piece of music? He's like, hell no. It's way faster for me to just write it from scratch. But the underlying point here is that it's not precious. None of this is precious. My character of Monkey is not unique. He's not special. He's reasonably well implemented to where if you watch my show, he's fairly entertaining. People like Monkey. There's nothing special about this idea. There's nothing special about this monkey. He's just a freaking funny animal character in a cartoon, okay? That's it. Nothing more. Okay, so it's really, really important that I get over myself. It's very important that we all get over ourselves and realize that we're just people trying to do this thing. And so, because if you don't look at it that way, this little conceit you have where you tell yourself, oh, I've got so many great ideas. Oh, there's so many. That's just another excuse to never get nothing done. That's what your daddy would tell you. Maybe not your daddy, but your mentor, your business advisor. That's what he'd say, okay, cut the bullshit, right? You don't have 800 good ideas. You don't even have 3. You might have 1. And the only way your 1 is ever going to actually be a good idea is when it is crafted. In other words, when it's subjected to the hard work. It hasn't even become a good... You think it's a good idea? You're nuts. You're kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself because you're not out there actually competing with the people that are doing the real work. So you tell yourself they're great ideas. You don't even know what you're talking about. Okay? Again, sounds harsh, but if you accept it fully, you'll go, you know what? That's exactly what I needed to hear. Totally what I needed to hear because that's the truth. So that's how Mike Post looked at it. He said, it's just brickwork. Mike Post said this about composing. The most successful composer in the history of television who doesn't socially network at all, really. He's got friends. He's a regular person. But he's just a really unassuming guy. And he said, it's just brickwork. It's just brickwork. I just do the work, man. I create music, We're not curing cancer here. There's nothing special about it. I'm really grateful that I can do it. I'm really thankful that I have the opportunity to do this really, really cool thing that, maybe not everybody gets to be able to do. But there's nothing special about it. Right? No, you don't have too many good ideas. You don't have enough good ideas. You got too many bad ideas and too many good ideas, potentially good ideas that haven't been crafted and implemented to the point where they've actually been pounded into actual good ideas. So therefore, if you accept that mentality about yourself, then what are you going to do? You're going to say, okay, my job now is to take 1. And I've said this to you before here on the channel too. I've said, no, don't show me your 50 good ideas, Amar. Show me 1. That's what I've said. I've said it somewhat snarkily. But I mean it because I love you, man. I love you. Show me your 1 idea that's fully crafted into a fully realized thing that you're proud of to the point where it's competitive. Okay, so that might mean that you take 1 idea and all you can do for the next month gets you to the point where you've got, it's like that Castlevania thing. So you're doing a knockoff of Castlevania. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Don't get into the whole idea of it's not original idea because that's just another story you tell yourself as another excuse not to finish. You don't want to do that. So screw it. Of course, everything that's on television is a copy and a slight modification of something that came before. That's the way it is. That's the way it works. That's what we do. We stand on the shoulders of giants. It's all good. Okay? So then in a month's period of time, the best you can do, because you only have so much time, is create something that's 30 seconds long. Well, my encouragement to you, my exhortation is the word I was looking for, is do 30 seconds, and I'm going to give you one word here. I'm going to actually type it into the chat, and this is the word I want you to think about, Amar, and this is the word I want us all to think about. It's actually the goal I have for Salt and Light. Salt and Light is not going to be excellent on every level, okay? It is not. It's not going to be the best drawing. It's not going to be the best music. It's not going to be the best story. It's not going to be the best voices. It's going to be reasonably above the threshold of good enough in every area, and there will probably be a couple areas where it excels. But basically, it's just a show. It's just a show. Okay? But if you look at the total aggregate result, and to a degree in my case, add to the fact that this was all done by one guy, Ooh. Okay, when you put that all together, there's one word that I would like to be able to be applied to my show. And there's a word I'd like you, Amar, to apply to your Castlevania knockoff. Okay, and by the way, if you're not working on that Castlevania knockoff like you said you were going to, and you're not doing only that, then you and Goswami seem to have some things in common, don't you? Think about that one. Ouch, that hurts. But here's the idea. Here's the word. Here's the word. I'm going to type it into the chat. Undeniable. You give me 30 seconds of a Castlevania knockoff concept where when I watch those 30 seconds, it is undeniable. I go, oh my God, if you could get this guy to do 24 minutes of this, we've got a show. We've got something here. This guy, we want this guy on our team. You give me 30 seconds of undeniable, Amar. You do that. And now we're talking. Okay? I don't know who you're blowing the kiss to, Maria, but... Oh, that's Yvette blowing a kiss. No, that's Maria. But that's what I want you to do, my friend. I want you to do only a little bit that's undeniable instead of having 8,000 ideas floating around out there. That, everything about the quality of those ideas, I guarantee is just a story you've been telling yourself anyway. So you have nothing to lose by... literally nothing to lose by just honing in, right? Let me see what I'm trying to do here. I think what I need to do is paint this. Okay, we're in behind mode, so this is a little tricky. I think I need to... Oh, okay, that did work. Sorry. It painted it in behind mode, so that means the paint layer... this is actually a little tricky. This is okay. You see the problem I got myself into by baking the paint into the guy, because the hands, the paint layer is behind, but the hands are supposed to be in front. Oh my! I painted myself into a corner here, quite literally. That's funny. So there's the hands merged. There's the okay. This will do the trick. So this could probably be moved up. Yes, that will work. Oh boy. I am such a silly goose. Are you with me, Amar? I think you are, and I really, I hope and pray. I mean, I kid you not. I hope and pray that this is sinking in a way that's meaningful to you, like in your heart and your mind. You're going, oh God, that's right. Let's do that. Let's just do that. If we just do that, we'll get to where we were trying to be. And then when that happens... Oh my gosh, how cool is that, The money doesn't matter. The money will come. That's why I use the word undeniable. If the 30 seconds is undeniable, do you think the opportunities will just appear? Of course they will. They may not be exactly what you expected, but the opportunities will appear. Because people are going to look at your work and go, wow, what this guy's doing is undeniable. This is good work. Right? Maybe we can build on this. Maybe we can do something with it, right? That's what we want to do. That's where we want to get to. Okay, so, by the way, I turned on the wrong channel. I swear, you guys, I really do hope this is helpful. Because I truly believe if everyone would get a hold of these ideas, we would all be happier and more productive doing stuff. And we'd be improving, too. Because we wouldn't be so sidetracked by these stupid stories we tell ourselves that prevent us from. For me, the best thing I can do on a daily basis, just slowly chug forward. Just do what I'm doing. And the reason I'm redoing so many shots in the show is because I want the show to be undeniable. Now, some people that are, I want to concede this point. If you're a person who is a little bit more of an animation snob, then you're going to look at my show and you're not going to think it's undeniable, right? You're going to find things to criticize about it, and that's okay. You're not wrong. Okay? You are not wrong when you criticize my show. My show has shortcomings. You can't be good at everything, and you can't even be good at everything with a team. Let's say economically. Yeah, see, we have a real problem here. I need to basically erase. Yeah, we've got to erase this. I really made a strategic error here. Okay, so I need to solo this layer, and what I need to do is probably just fill it with erase. Okay, so that, unfortunately, even in behind mode, see, that created a problem. So I really gave myself a pickle here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a color select, and let's see what happens if we cut it. That worked. Okay, so let's just keep doing that. So we'll do a color select and cut it. Color select and cut it. Sorry about that, folks. That was a foolish mistake. Well, it just underscores the importance of keeping your ink and paint in separate layers until there's a darn good reason to keep them to bake them together. Actually, if I would have followed my own advice there, I wouldn't have been in that pickle. So there you go. All right, so now Alpha Lock. You love that Alpha Lock, girl, don't you? Chopin. 1 a.m. Okay, so yeah, my let's just say, at the risk of sounding maudlin, my hope and prayer for you, Amar, is that you just really get lost in the process and can really enjoy creating something that you really feel good about, and then, who knows what the opportunities will be. Who knows? I have no clue. But it certainly puts you in a lot better position on every level, psychologically, emotionally, creatively, in terms of your craft, blah blah blah. When you finish something versus not. I think what I got to do here. This is quite a. We've got ink there and ink there, so I really actually think I'm gonna do some inkin' thinking here. I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to switch to this ink pen so that I can then put it in erase mode, and I'm actually going to just do some frame by frame cleanup here and then plan on painting around it, because I really seem to be giving myself grief here because of the way the layering is working, and I can be such a silly goose at times. Boop boop doop doop. Oh, that didn't take very long, did it? So now let's just keep going forward, and we will just do some cleanup, friends. We're going to do some cleanup. Something I learned with Chopin. Okay, man. It's cool too. All it takes is one. All it takes is one what? All it takes is one what? I'm not sure if you're responding to me or if that's to Maria or what, so I'm just keeping the old conversation going here. All it takes is one what? All it takes is one, he said. To which I said, one what? All it takes is one. I must say I've given this particular sequence quite a bit of time, but at the same time it constitutes about 6 shots or something, so it's not really a violation or anything. Let's see. Completing one image project fully in the way I want it to look. Well, and that's why I say limiting it to a trailer. I mean, think about it. I mean, a trailer gives you a selling tool. I mean, honestly, if you wanted to, you could create a trailer. If the trailer's undeniable, then freaking go on Indiegogo and do a crowdfund if you want to, and see if people say, hey, if this is what your trailer looks like, by gum, we'd like to support the show. Or maybe it will open a path to some sort of satisfying or profitable collaboration of some kind. Who knows? May affect your employability, quite frankly. Absolutely could happen. Let's see. I just hit the 2-hour mark, so I think I'm going to sign off. Yes, I think I'm going to sign off. I've blabbed enough today. Now, when I sign off, you guys, listen. This is important. This little talk we've had today is really for you guys. It's for the people that come around a lot. And Tom is saying, you could. Yeah, I mean, usually I probably would. If I was in Tahoma, I would be using the lasso eraser. It's a little more problematic in Krita because if you create a selection, then that works pretty well. Normally for a lasso erase, what I do is I use the the freehand path tool, I should say, in erase mode, and that works pretty well, but you don't actually have as much control over the lines, and I was just kind of thinking in this case I really just wanted to have a lot of control, so hence I just did a hand erase. But anyway, my point was that everything I've talked about today, some of it might seem a little scatterbrained, but I can guarantee you that none of it is just off the cuff. These are things that I've really thought about a lot in my own creative and learning and business process. And some of these lessons have been hard won through, a lot of years of experience, being in business, creating movies, dealing with everything associated with trying to do what I'm doing here, which is, this is one guy creating an entire animated cartoon series. Can it be done? Has it ever been done in the history of the world? I don't think so. You've got sort of little noodles that are kind of coming close to it with, I guess, guys like Seth MacFarlane or Matt Groening, who ultimately wound up with pretty substantial teams that actually did the work. But believe me, I am very cognizant of the fact that you can put this show out there and it won't find its audience. It's like it just people won't grab it or whatever. It could happen. This is why I say you better love the work. You better love the work, because there's no guarantee that it's going to be successful, right? But if you love the minutes and the hours, what you're doing, it's inherently worth it. Then that can sort of work. So anatomically, this is a little questionable, especially right there. But you got to remember that monkey's in front of him, so sort of the sloppiness of it is sort of hidden, and it's all one frame at a time until he closes his hand around like that. That's the only place where it actually lands. So these are little tricks I play, But yeah, my point is that I don't blab about these things just for kicks. I really do hope that somebody finds it helpful, and we'll put it to work. Okay, what are we doing here? I think I'm going to sign off, take a break. And thanks, guys, for being here. There are 9 people concurrently viewing, and I just can't believe I'm really that interesting. But I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad, I hope this turns out to be kind of sort of useful. And but I'm ready for a break. So I will sign off, and as you guys know, there will be more later.